You're listening to SM Media, the #1 place for exclusive content.
Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of All Time 11 right here on SM Media. I'm Scott McPike, delighted to be your host as always. A very special guest in this week's show. I'm joined by the former Celtic model and United goalkeeper Barry-John Corr. Barry, it's a pleasure to welcome you onto the show. Thanks for joining me.
No, thanks for having me, Scott.
No worries. How are you? How you been?
All good. Yeah, just plodding along. I think it's a tough time for everyone, but yeah, we can't complain.
And obviously as well, you've not played in a long time. Do you miss a game?
I don't miss it from where I ended up,
right?
To be honest, I think when you play in front of a crowd, you know, your performance sort of feeds off of the crowd as well. And when you go down the leagues, you end up playing in front of a couple of hundred people. Mm-hmm. Particularly if you're the goalkeeper standing there, you're just taking the abuse constantly. I'm sure I'm not the only goalkeeper that would say that, but it wasn't too enjoyable part-time. Listen, I take my hat off to the boys that do that for their whole careers part-time. I found it difficult to adjust to it. Yeah, to answer the question, no, I don't miss it. Not once have I thought I wish I was still playing on a Saturday.
No. You spent 7 years at Celtic. What was your favourite memories of your time at Celtic?
Obviously getting a run out in the first team, something that will stay with me forever, albeit it was only the one match, but it's one more than millions of other people. I used to be embarrassed about it, to say that to people, but the older you get, the more mature you get. You know what, you look back and think, I actually played in that team.
Brilliant. We'll make a wee start in your team. We'll go with the formation. What formation are you going to set up with?
I think we're going to go old school here and go with a tried and tested 4-4-2.
Brilliant. Is it players you played with or played against?
Played with.
Brilliant. And we'll start off with your goalkeeper. Now, obviously, you played in that position. Are you putting yourself in your own team?
Do you know what? I think I have to. I know that I'll get a game. Listen, I could have put in a couple of people there that I worked with and trained alongside, and they were brilliant for me. Particularly big Gordon Marshall. He was class with me. Really helped me along, not just as a goalkeeper, but how to handle yourself and be a man about things as well. I shadowed him for a couple of years at Motherwell, but unfortunately, I'm getting the nod this time.
And see coming through, who were the good mentors coaching wise with you when you were coming through at Celtic?
Coaching wise, when I was growing up, to me Pat Bonner was everything to me, and for him to come and sign me for Celtic, it was a massive thing for me because he was a goalkeeping coach. He was at the end of his playing career. So when he signed me up, it was a big thing for me. So he had a big influence on me. Gordon Marshall was always on hand as well. And then sort of after a few years, Terry General came in to Celtic with all the goalkeepers. So they've all played a part. And probably later on as well, Stevie Woods was getting more into the coaching side. He was just starting his coaching career. And to this day, what I see what he does with the goalkeepers up at Celtic, it's phenomenal. Yeah,
definitely. Brilliant. We'll move into your defence. We'll start off with right back. Who have you got at right back?
Right back, we're going to go Jackie Mack.
Right, okay.
Jackie McNamara. I don't think he needs any explanation why. You know, listen, you can put Jackie and play him anywhere on the side. He's just an all-rounder. You know, but just unfortunately, this team, he's going to have to slot in at right back.
And could you see just how, what was it about him that just stood out, when you played alongside him?
His consistency, his quality, first and foremost. He could just get up and down the field. He can pass the ball, he could defend. He had a bit of grit about him as well. You know, I think the modern defenders are more about going forward, but he could go both ways.
Brilliant. We'll move into the right-sided centre-back. Who's next to Jackie?
The right-sided, I think probably John Kennedy will play that side.
Okay.
In the middle. John was one that we kind of came through the youth team, reserve team together. It's unfortunate what happened early very early in his career, but he's done not too bad in terms of coaching now as well. As a player, he had everything. You know, for a centre back, he was tall, he was powerful, he had a presence about him. You know, he had that aggression that he needed as well to be a top class defender. It was just such a shame that his career got cut short in the way that it did.
Yeah, definitely. Couldn't agree more with that. Who partners John Kennedy in the centre back position?
At the back, in the middle, got to be Tom Boyd.
Right, okay.
Well, Tom Boyd, he was Mr. Celtic back then. You know, he was probably towards the end of his career, but you look at the career that he had. You know, he'd been down south as well with Chelsea. He'd already won the Scottish Cup with Motherwell. Then he came into Celtic, probably a difficult period in Celtic's history, but he came through it. Ended up captaining the side. He's just a steady player, wasn't
he? Yeah, definitely.
Top class international.
Yeah, definitely. Left back, who closes out the defence?
Left back, this was a tough one because a few boys that I could have put in there that I played with anyway. Particularly Motherwell, you had Stevie Hamill. You know, again, just Mr. Consistency.
Yeah.
Never outstanding, but never had an off day either. He was always just a 7 out of 10. Jamie McQuilkin as well. We played with him at Queen's. Again, he was just steady up and down the field. But I think the one that stands out has got to be Tosh McKinlay.
Right, okay.
Tosh McKinlay, I mean, if he was playing in today's game, I mean, how much would he be worth? You know, the deliveries that he could put into the box were phenomenal. If you look back at probably the Celtic side under Tommy Burns, the amount of assists he must have had by putting balls in the box. So he's got to be in there. He was always good with the young boys as well, I must say. He was always one of the ones that would talk to the young boys, and listen, he always looked $1 million as well. We used to always look at him. Most football players that came in to their training, they're just coming in like jeans, t-shirt or a tracksuit. Tosh was always immaculately dressed. Right. He really was.
Brilliant. See, obviously, that's a brilliant defence so far. See, when you left Celtic, was it sore kind of leaving your boyhood club and kind of realising you wouldn't make it at that level?
Yeah, the way that it played out, because I broke my back in 2 places.
Yeah.
And I had 2 years out of the game, which I worked so hard to come back from it. I'd done really well to keep my weight down, and I came back from it. And to be told at that point by Martin O'Neill, listen, obviously David Marshall's exploded onto the scene now.
Yeah,
we can't run with two young goalkeepers here. We need to keep an experienced one. Obviously, you've been out for 2 years. We're getting nothing back from you, which I thought was ridiculous, even to this day. To say that, I mean, I broke my back in 2 places. What else can I give back? And for the money that was on, comparison to the wages out there at the time, you know, we're talking a couple £100. I thought it was, even to this day, I think it's ridiculous. So it was painful at the time, because probably the biggest pain our pain point is, where do you go? You've had 2 years out. Who is going to touch you? A lot of the clubs back then, particularly if you were to look at anything down south, if you remember, ITV Sport.
ITV Digital, yeah.
Yeah, they had a big collapse. So all the clubs in England were really tightening their belt financially. Why would they want to touch a goalkeeper with a unproven, but also with a injury record there as well? You know, so no one was wanting to look at me whatsoever. And it was just really fortunate for me that Motherwell again had financial troubles just before I joined. They'd just come out of administration and they were paying peanuts, to be honest.
Yeah.
However, my options were so limited.
And what was your time like at Motherwell?
Motherwell, I thought I should have played more.
Right.
Okay, I really did. I was performing well in training daily. I was working alongside Gordon Marshall, who I said earlier, he was first class with me. You know, he was 40 years old at that point. He was so fit, he was so dedicated, and his performances were he was so consistent.
Yeah.
For a long period. But once he did start to have a little bit of a blip, the manager at the time, he was still very loyal to his experienced players. And obviously Gordon Marshall was one of them. I'd like to have played more. I think I should have played more. I mean, the games I played, I'd come in, go to Ibrox, come off with man of the match. The week after, we would be playing, I think it was maybe January 2nd or 3rd, the New Year game. We played Aberdeen at home, clean sheet, man of the match again. But the week after, Gordon Marshall was fit again.
Yeah.
But the manager wanted to go with experience.
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, I knew I had to get out of here. I played 2 games in the bounce. There are 2 man of the match, clean sheet, and I still get dropped. So I thought, what's the point here? I'm now 24. I need to start playing every week. I want to play every week.
Yeah, definitely. We'll move into your midfield. We'll start off with the right midfielder. Who you got in there?
On the right, this boy I grew up with at primary school and high school. We played with the same local boys club team all the way through. Jamie Smith.
Right. Okay. He had a lot of potential, didn't he?
He was. I mean, all the way through, from a very young age, you always knew he was the one that was going to go all the way.
Mm-hmm.
He was just a standout from a very young age. Like I said, we grew up together. We're very close friends all the way through. And it's unusual for 2 kids in the same primary school class to go on and get a game for Celtic.
Yeah.
But listen, he's done well as well. He's had a great career. And I think he's now enjoying life out in America.
I went to Holland, didn't he, for Celtic?
Yeah, he had a brief spell out there in Holland before he came back to Aberdeen.
Mm-hmm.
And Aberdeen, he was the main man, wasn't he? For
a
couple of years. But, listen, he done well. He had a really good run out in the first team, particularly in the, correct me if I'm wrong, it was the UEFA Cup final season back in 2003. He was playing their semi-final against Boavista.
Yeah.
Done really well, had a good career. So, yeah, he's got to be in there.
Brilliant. We'll move into the right-sided centre midfielder.
The right midfield. Probably on the right, you'd play Liam Miller.
Brilliant.
Liam Miller was, he had everything.
Yeah.
Again, from the young age, coming through at Celtic, you just knew he was going to go on and be a player.
Mm-hmm.
No coincidence that once he did get his chance in the first team, that right away he became a mainstay in that side. He wasn't just dipping in and out of it. He's performing in the Champions League, scoring goals in the Champions League, and it's no coincidence that he got his move to Man United.
Brilliant.
But what a player he was. But
what was he like? Is he a nice guy as well?
Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. He's really kind of close relationship, and it's always that way. We see boys that you grew up with in the youth team and reserve team. I mean, I'm friends with most of them still today.
Yeah, and
it's strange saying that because I've been at other clubs and I've not got those relationships elsewhere. But the boys that you grew up with, they're still good friends. It's daft as a brush, but in a good way.
Brilliant. Brilliant. But we'll move. Who partners Liam Miller on the centre midfield? Who's on the left side?
In the middle of the park, Paul Lambert.
Comes up in a lot of these.
I mean, Paul Lambert came in as a Champions League winner to Celtic. Yeah. Months before, he just won the Champions League. And then he's another one who was brilliant with the young boys. And me in particular, this is back in the days where Lennoxtown wasn't even an idea yet. So back then you got changed at Celtic Park, and then you jumped in cars along to Barrowfield for training. And Paul Lambert, he had no airs or graces about him. He would jump in my car. I mean, back then I'd just turned 18. I had an old rusty red Vauxhall Astra with big stickers across the window. It was just, but he didn't bother him. He jumped in the car and he would kind of give me a bit of a ribbon for it as well. It was good to be around and someone you really looked up to. The Champions League winner. He's a Scotland internationalist. Right away, but you could tell he was class.
Brilliant. We'll move into the final position in the midfield, the left mid. Who's in there?
The left midfield is somebody that was at Celtic when I was there. I never played with him at Celtic. I played with him at Motherwell when he'd been away. He came back up. Phil O'Donnell.
Brilliant. Okay.
Phil O'Donnell came in. Obviously, he knew me from being at Celtic as well. He actually sat beside me in the dressing room at Motherwell. Mm-hmm. So, we got on great right away, and I mean, he still had quality. When he came home to Motherwell, he was maybe about 34, 35 years old. He was coming towards the end of his playing career.
Yeah.
and right away you could tell he's got something about him. You know, he raised the standard around training. Again, his professionalism, someone you looked up to. I think his quality on the field, everyone can see that.
Definitely, brilliant player, brilliant midfield as well. What was your days like at Celtic Stranraer, Craney, Celton area? You get good memories for your time there?
Do you know what? At Stranraer, I loved it.
Right.
And it's going to sound bizarre because we ended up going down through the playoffs. But that season, it was just a great team environment. It really was. The thing was with Stranraer, before I had joined, they had 2 promotions in succession. So they were in the championship at that time. They were always going to be up against it. They had a big turnaround in players that summer to try and stay up in the championship. But we loved it. It was just a great atmosphere. The team bonded well. We'd played a team nights out together. They trained in Glasgow, which suited me as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a good time there, even though I know that sounds crazy because we eventually went down through the playoffs, but it's a good year for everyone.
Definitely.
For that team as well, it's probably the end of an era because they came up for 2 years and then went back down, and it sort of all kind of broke up after that.
Queen of the Southern Air as well. Was there any memories for your time there?
Just bad.
Was it?
Aye, I did not enjoy that at all down at Queen's. I really didn't. At that time, we were the only club who were part-time in the division. And the manager at the time, Ian McCall, he told me we're going to train in Glasgow. We're all Glasgow-based players, so we train in Glasgow. Not once did we train in Glasgow. Not once. So I was out every day, obviously working away, going 100 mile an hour so that I could get down to Dumfries because the traffic, I mean, if you don't leave Glasgow by 4:30, you were not getting to training for another few hours. The traffic was terrible. And even down there, we trained, we didn't have any goals. It was just a big grass open field, markers down for goals. Or else it was on one of these Astro pitches that was like the old hockey pitch, like sand-based.
Yeah.
Because I had back history, I'm not jumping about like a madman on that. You know, it's part-time football. But I mean, listen, I'm not saying it's a bad club, but I didn't enjoy it at all. I really didn't. I was in and out of the side. I had no consistent playing time down there. It's 2 games in, 2 games out. Splitting my time with the boy Colin Scott, who again is a great professional. I really got on fine with him, but it didn't suit me at all. And eventually we ended up doing a 3rd night training because we're struggling that year. We're rock bottom, so 3 nights in Dumfries. And I'm Glasgow based. I found it really tough.
Yeah, definitely. We'll finish up your team. We'll go through your strikers first of all. Who's on the left-hand side of the striker too?
There's 2 strikers. Probably there's 2 of them through the middle, and the 2 of them are superstars here. First one's Mark Viduka.
Brilliant. Okay.
Mark Viduka, again, I don't know what it was. I just struck up a really good friendship with him right away. I think it's just because when I was in the first team squad at that time, there's maybe 3 or 4 young boys, and Mark Viduka at the time was only 21, so he would kind of pally up more with the younger ones. And again, I mean, I'd stay behind with him for hours and hours every day. He would just want someone to hit shots at, should I say, take the piss out of. But it's again great to be round about guys like that.
Yeah.
Who are proven first team players, and I mean, it doesn't happen now. Players can't go back out and work on their weaknesses anymore because you've got all this sports science stuff and you're in the red zone, so you might get injured. I think that's bizarre. Guys, can you imagine back then the manager coming out and say, "Come off, you're in the red zone, don't practice." That's what modern football's like now.
Aye, definitely. But who partners Mark Viduka up front?
It's got to be Henrik Larsson.
No surprise there.
I don't have to explain that one, I don't think.
What was it like? What was it like in the dressing room though as well? Was it good with like you coming through the youth team?
Yeah, it was all right. It wasn't one. He wouldn't mingle with us as much or chat to us as much as somebody like a Posh McKinley or Jackie, even Mark Viduka. It was more. He knew he was good without being arrogant, and without having that arrogance about him. Because I think there's a fine line between confidence and arrogance. He was probably right on the line with it. He's quiet. He wasn't a shouter. He wasn't a moaner. He just got on with his work. And listen, look what he came back from. He had a horrific injury. I think he came back even better.
Yeah, I think he did as well, actually.
Yeah, so yeah, and look at after Celtic, he moved on, didn't he? And look what he achieved.
Yeah, definitely.
Look what he is now.
I know, definitely. Trying to be the Celtic manager one day.
I think it's a big ask. I mean, he's worshipped there, isn't he?
You
know, the last thing you'd want is for him to come in and not
do well.
When the thing is with Celtic and Rangers, you know the demand.
Yeah.
You win every game, and see the minute you don't win, they want you out. And it's going to happen one day. I mean, even if he came in and he won weeks for a few years, there's going to come a day where he doesn't win one. Now look at this season with Neil Lennon. It wasn't so long ago the Celtic fans loved him, and this year, not so much. It's just part of the world we live in. It's not nice.
Yeah, definitely. But really good team. Is there any players that you just feel kind of missed out that deserve a wee mention?
Yeah, there's another one at left back that probably got in most teams is Stephen Craney.
Yeah, he was.
Craney. He's another one, but I'm just putting Tosh just ahead of him, unfortunately. Up front as well, you had a couple of options. Mark Burchill, who, as a young boy, he just exploded onto the scene. Incredible pace. Again, unfortunate because he had a couple of injuries that maybe took a yard off his speed, which was a huge part of his game.
Yeah.
But what a finisher. Put the ball on his left foot. I must say, not his right foot. On his left foot, he'll finish. Other boys, Scott McDonald came into Motherwell and had a great impact at Motherwell. Went on to have a great career. Middle of the park, you know, it was Liam Miller, Lambert, Craig Burley's there as well. Craig Burley's there, but I think the two that I've picked, I don't think there were too many complaints.
Brilliant. What are you doing with yourself now?
We're involved in property, residential property. Been doing that for a number of years now. We've just built up a really strong portfolio. We'll continue to add to that as well. So involved heavily with that side of things. We've got our own property mentorship program as well, where we show people how we have done things, and really just keeping things down to earth. You know, we're not shouting and bawling about it, you know, Americanized. It's we know what we can do, we know what we're good at, and we're always going to keep growing.
Brilliant, but it's been an absolute pleasure for you, Barry-John. I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's been good stuff. Thanks for having me.
Thanks very much, mate. All the best.
Good man. Cheers.